The sun is shrinking, slowly dying, like my soul.
The 2025 press launch season kicked off in style with a return to the ancient capital of fat English people and mobility scooters. Some may think the Kawasaki Z900 has a face only a mother could love, yet the funky middleweight naked has proven popular in recent years and has received a hefty evolution for 2025. The 122 brake horsepower inline-4 remains unchanged, bar some new cams and shorter internal gearing. Likewise, the chassis is relatively similar, and welcome to 2025, because the Z900 now has radial mounted calipers. The big news perhaps is the introduction of a 6-axis IMU and the consequent upgrade of its electronic suite, along with a new dash, and wait for it, a voice command function that lets you talk to the bike for things like navigation and fuel information. I'll drop a link in the description for a demo vid. We were riding the £9,199 base model. There's also an £11,349 SE version with added Gucci bits such as Olin suspension and Brembo brakes. Anyway, back to skids and wheelies. Hola, as they say in Benidorm. Just behind me, we've got a fleet of 2025 Kawasaki Z900s. Now, we're in exactly the same hotel, exactly the same roads. Just a few weeks ago, we were riding the Honda Hornet, which, as you know, I love very much. So this is a perfect test of Kawasaki's new middleweight naked beauty. So without further ado, let's saddle the old girl.
Welcome to the cockpit. There's something missing though. What's missing? There we go. That's better. Lovely. Right, let the good times roll. So of course this is a proper direct rival to the Honda Hornet that I was here riding a few weeks ago, month ago. Same roads, same conditions, so it's going to be interesting. It's very fluffy at the bottom, as in soft. I don't mean sort of shit. I just mean a bit. Oh, bloody hell. Yeah, the initial part of the throttle is very soft, very tamed down. And we're in low power mode. That's why. Oh, twat. So you've got to stop to change the mode, which is slightly annoying. I think we're going to get along just fine here. John adjusting his clutch, ready for a pinging. Got to say the blipper and the shifter is very nice, as you expect from a motorcycle in 2025 on the sporty side. Very kind of sharp, very direct. Works all the way through the rev range nicely, thank you. Look, the first thing you're greeted to in the cockpit are these 1992 ZXR 400 levers. I can only assume that Kawasaki had sort of unearthed some unearthed some sort of 90s levers in the parts bin somewhere and went, right, let's whack them on the Z900. I think you've definitely got to be in the right gear. That's my conclusion so far. You've got to be in the right gear. You can't be lazy, you can't rely on that low end. Although it has got a lovely little mid-range gusset. Kind of that sort of 6-7 grand mark. You really do notice a hit. Yeah. I mean, it's very smooth, it's very predictable. I mean, look, if you're just riding along, it's fine, but if you want to exit a corner with momentum and get from A to B quicker, you definitely need second gear in these tighter corners, because it's just a little bit wheezy. It suffers from a bit of asthma at the bottom end. Got my new RST gloves. I think you'll find they're pretty trendy, so go well with my lid, my skid lid, skip licker. The initial part of the throttle is quite it's not as smooth as it could be, that's for sure. The sort of low speed stuff, you've got to be you know, if you don't want it to jerk, you've got to be pretty careful with your right hand. I've got to say, it's not glamorous, it's not overly exotic or Gucci, but I do like the dash. Very simple. You know, okay, we looked at it last night in the briefing, but I was quick to kind of pick up, you know, your eyes focus on what you want to see, and it's yeah, not overcomplicated. I mean, there's a lot of space to to be doing stuff with, but then again I like that. It's yeah, quite simple. As with the controls, they're, you know, quite intuitive. It runs out of revs quicker than I thought. So in typical Kawasaki fashion, oh by the way, we're on a bloody Kawasaki launch. We are on a Kawasaki launch. But yes, in typical Kawasaki style, we have this first bit of guided riding this morning. We're all in a line, the usual guff, and then we are going to a photo stop, getting all the videos and photos done, and then we got the rest of the day to free ride. So we've got TomTom Mount here, we've got TomTom, we've got a preloaded route back to the hotel, and yeah, that's when the fun starts. Oh yes, I mean look, straight away it's not, ooh, it's definitely wet, it's not a Hornet. It hasn't got the agility. I mean, I think the biggest thing I can feel is its weight in the front end. The Hornet you could just play with, it was just like a bogey. But yeah, this is not a direct criticism of the Kawasaki, because in isolation you ride this and go, wow, yeah, it's nice, it's agile, it steers well, and it does steer well, but it hasn't got that flickability and sheer agility of the Hornet, that's for sure. I'll tell you what it loses out in cubes, it makes up for in excitement and just that induction bark. That sort of 5-6 grand induction bark where the engine catches up with your throttle input. It's very addictive. I've got to say, it's one of those bikes that you don't need to be screaming its tits off to enjoy it or for a bit of excitement. There's something about it, you know, it's, like I said, it's not a Hornet in terms of outright power and handling, but there's something intrinsic with the throttle, the induction noise. It is a fun engine still. Don't get me wrong, look, when you're bouncing off the limiter, of course it's going to be more fun. I think I almost prefer this, a motor like this, you know, it's not a big bore 1000, it's not making silly horsepower. I think I prefer a bike that's a bit soft at the bottom, a bit flaccid, you know, a bit asthma-y, a bit wheezy, and then you have this mid-range hit, and you have that excitement in the mid-range. You've got something to look forward to. There's a bit of an event going on, rather than just a sort of linear power delivery. That's just me, but I can tell you it definitely adds something. I've got to say, in these damp conditions, there's plenty of feel, loads of grip. I mean, Dunlop Q5, never ridden on in my life, but they do feel okay. But there's lots of mechanical grip as well. You can feel it through the chassis. The chassis is screaming grip. As I mentioned, one of the first things you're greeted with, apart from the dash, are these levers and the controls, and they don't welcome you. They're not like, come on, oh yeah, lovely, have a feel of me, come on. I think the positioning doesn't help either. They're very they could do with going in. You're halfway up a lever when you're grabbing the clutch. I've just turned it off and I turned it back on again. In rider mode, it stays with the traction control off. Now that is a big tick. I like that. Stays in full power, stays traction control off. So yeah, I mean, I thought there was some weird Euro rule that you had to reset it, but obviously not. Kawasaki have got a path to not do that. So we're nearly at luncheon. We spent about an hour and a half doing some photos and videos, and the roads have warmed up, the roads have dried out, and I've got much better understanding of this thing. I'm more at home. As I said, it's difficult for me not to compare it to a Hornet SP. It's also not so difficult to say the Hornet is a better all-round package, but I think ultimately you've got to really like the styling. And apparently, according to Kawasaki, who did numerous hours of research, market research, they said that a lot of their customers, not surprisingly, considered styling one of the most important things for a bike like this. Oh, we're here for an extra dose of Sagomi. Sagomi's on the menu. Can I have a plate of Sagomi, please? Can I have a pint of Sagomi, please? Well, we just had a splendid luncheon at El Cesta. A bit of Iberian ham with cheese, a bit of pork loin, and the main event was some beef cheek. Now that was exceptional. beef chicken fries till he dies. So we've had a quick chat with the Japanese guys and the engineers and found out a bit more because the briefing last night was slightly vague. So now, yeah, we're solo, us and Tom. Muggins here is leading the way, and we're going to really set to work. Bit of ABS there, bit of ABS intrusion. I do like that induction bark. I tell you what, it's lacking in cubes and horsepower compared to some rivals, but it makes up with it, with that sound. I tell you, away from the bike, off the bike, it does sound very nice. It's definitely a little bit twitchy on the brakes. It's not unstable, but it's what's going on here? I was leant over so the Tom has flipped round. We reached the limit of suspension there. It's the front forks are very soft, I'll give them that. Lots of dive, completely unlike the Hornet. God, whee! Yeah, ABS was pumping up then. And the other thing the engineer said was, if you can hear me over the induction bark, the front end's been dropped 3mm, so the forks have been pulled up 3mm through the yokes to make it racier. So it's so bizarre. You've got this soft cut limiter which sort of kicks in obviously just before the red line, and then it just sort of teases you up to the red line where it goes da, 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 da. Ooh, a bit lively there. It's like a Japanese KTM this, in the nicest possible way. I mean that it's skittish on these corners. Yeah, it's quite skittish on the brakes. The suspension upsets the chassis, but it's not, you know, it's not bad. It makes you feel alive. It makes you feel like you're riding, you know. It's quite exciting. We just found a closed road, and would you believe it? It stunts like a good one.
Lady, where my baddies at? I'm bad, you bad. Way bad. Where my baddies at? I'm bad, you bad. Way bad. Where my baddies at? I'm bad.
We were all commenting then, it's the harder you ride it, the more rewarding this bike is, because the suspension is probably its biggest budget. Oh, someone else has done a burnout. Yeah, the suspension is probably the most noticeable budget componentry on the bike. So, but it's not, you know, it's not bad. This is a 9 grand bike, and it does 95% of stuff for 95% of people absolutely fine. Cool. Like I said, when it's on the side of the tyre mid corner, it feels as good as anything. It's just getting there and getting out. But that's me being really pedantic here. It looks like I've out-wheelied the ABS because it's turned itself off. Oh, honestly, officer. In the same kind of conversation should be the brakes, because look, they're alright, they work fine. And again, for 95% of the time, for 95% of the people, they work fine. They're a little bit wooden. You know, there's not a load of initial bite. And like I said, you could sit here and moan that it hasn't got a Costa coffee, Brembo Costa coffee on it, and as I said, it'd be nice to have some modern levers on it, because it does feel like you're riding something from the 90s. There's something dexterous and nice to touch. Oh, sorry love, sorry. What a lovely woofer. First gear. What I do like about this as well, you can use first gear, and the gearbox and the quick shifter's nice. Doesn't feel awkward going into first. There's no false neutral or no going into neutral. I've got to say, you know, we're talking marginal gains here. regarding the Honda. I mean, it sounds like I'm being harsh, but it's, like I said, it's so difficult not to put it head to head against the Hornet. You know, very rarely on routes like this will the Hornet be allowed to stretch its legs and use its advantage, use its cubic advantage and horsepower advantage over the Kawasaki, but just has a little bit of an edge with suspension, with agility. Ground clearance is fine. I mean, if I was in leathers and Winona riders, then it might be a different story. Shit! That's why I want some more brakes. It's just, that's when you feel the weight as well. It doesn't feel heavy most of the time. I mean, look, it feels heavier, more clumsy, less fluid than the Honda, but it's times like that when the brakes, you're hard on the brakes and you see God and you go, ugh. I want some more stopping power, Nige. Yeah, the front tyre, when you're on the absolute limit, this front tyre doesn't love it as much as it should do or could do. That's the first time I've wanted more grip. Yeah, flicking from left to right is another area where the Hornet would just see you latest. It's faster steering, more stable, but arguably this could be more fun. It's definitely got more attitude. I think I was also a bit too harsh earlier with the throttle, because I realised that it's not necessarily the fueling, although it can be a little bit jumpy. It's the throttle play. Of course, this is a press launch from the manufacturer directly with the factory, so they have their preferred settings, and my preferred setting would be a little less play. What I also like is the fact there's no stupid brake lights, flashing brake lights when you're hard on the brakes. I'm just a little bit bored of that now. There's nothing wrong with a good old set of solid solid red lights coming on to know that the rider is braking. If you can't figure out that the rider in front is braking hard or not, then you shouldn't be riding bikes. I get it, it's a safety feature for cars, etc, etc, but nah, ram it. Well, as we edge towards the mighty Benidorm, the sun is shrinking, slowly dying, like my soul. But in summary then, the engine's exciting, proves you don't need 150, 200 horsepower. You know, it wasn't that long ago we were sort of bemoaning inline fours, saying how boring they were, but this just goes to show, this bikes like these goes to show you don't need a twin or a triple or a V4 or a cross plane crank to necessarily make things interesting again. Kawasaki are making inline fours great again. It handles well, it's a bit on the tubby side, you can feel its weight most of the time when you're pushing hard. I mean, the electronics are brilliant, apart from the ABS, which is a little bit intrusive most of the time. The new electronic suite is I didn't feel the TC once. The brakes, the levers, the suspension, it's a little bit budget, but I'm sure some people jump on and go, oh, this is shit, but they're not educated and they don't understand the meaning of manufacturers trying to save. Some people won't realise that this is a cost-cutting measure for manufacturers to build a bike to a price point. And as I said, the vast majority of people will ride this bike and won't find the suspension too cheap, won't find the brakes too soft and vague. But obviously the aftermarket accessories include the 44 teeth sweatband, but this is a bike that's just over 9 grand and it packs a lot for 9 grand. Like I said, I like the dash, the electronics are good, the engine's sweet, the chassis most of the time is good. You get a lot of bike for 9 grand. In fact, there are some decent opportunities now for people to invest in naked bikes, you know, not super nakeds, but you know, back in the day anything but super nakeds were budget shitters. They were shocking. Now we've got an array of options from a lot of manufacturers, and to a decent price point as well, you know, sub 10 grand. Just we. I think it's time for a cold one, don't you? I'm taking the views of the mighty Benny.
There were several sort of key areas on the Hornet, and you had to really go looking for them to find the
fact that it only costs just over 9 grand or just under 10 grand for the SP. These levers, the master cylinder, the bars, the yokes. I mean, look, we've only just been upgraded to radial calipers, so that's a big thing. But it's not, the overall package doesn't look budget. It doesn't, you're not looking and going, God, that's cheap. That's a parts bin special. I mean, some might find this classy. Others may see differently. That is not my cup of tea. I'll take that straight off. But then again, it's probably saved the tank. But yeah, overall, seriously impressed. This is a fun motorcycle. It may not be as capable as the Honda, but we had fun today. I love that green frame. I love it. Anyway, I'm going to have a beer. Try and think of some more words to articulate. Arrivederci. Let me start on this beautiful backdrop of the mighty Benny by saying chapeau to Kawasaki. This launch, pretty rare these days, where normally we follow a guy in a high-vis jacket, and don't get me wrong, the pace is brilliant, but especially when you've got a GoPro on, you're talking, you're doing a line of bikes, and it's just a little bit guff. Today, we've been allowed to explore the limitations of the bike, truly understand its potential in a safe environment, and do our own thing, and it is brilliant. But anyway, that's a small part, but a kind of big part of the launch. Back to the bike. I keep banging on about it, but just a smidgen over 9 grand, you're getting a lot of bike. However, if it wasn't for the Hornet, the Honda Hornet, this would be amazing. Unfortunately, there is a bike called the Honda Hornet SP, and it's a very similar price, and look, it's better in most aspects. However, like Kawasaki owners say, you look at the styling, you look at the green frame, you look at the sort of modern lines, shall we say, of a Z900, and people will prefer that over a Honda Hornet SP. And it's a similar money, and you've got to love the look of it, really, to go for this over the Honda Hornet SP. But anyway, let's get out of the way. In summary then, the engine is lively, it's exciting. It's an inline 4, and like the Hornet SP, it's exciting. It's, like I said, the noise, the induction, away from the bike, it sounds good. And as I mentioned on the vlog, you've got, the last couple of years we've been praising V4s, cross-plane cranks, twins, triples, etc., because they're different, they're exciting, they bring something new to the game. But bikes like this, bikes like the Honda Hornet SP, proves you don't need, the good old-fashioned inline 4 is all you ever need. The chassis, it's brilliant. I think it's let down by suspension a little bit. You can tell it's budget, but it's only when you're on the vinegar stroke, it's only when you're chasing temps that its limitations are highlighted. For, as I said, 95% of the time, 95% of people, this bike will do just fine. Regardless of what I said, regardless of this launch, regardless of my opinion and review, most people will buy this bike because they like the styling. They prefer the styling over the Honda, they prefer the styling over other manufacturers. So what I said matters little. If you like the styling, you're getting a decent bike, it's a decent package, and it's a smidgen over 9 grand. You can't really go wrong unless you've got a mate who has a Hornet SP.